Nielsen putting the viewership, let's talk about that first, 112.8 million, the largest TV audience in history. What do the numbers look like if you add in the streaming viewers?
If you add in streaming and out of home, the people who are at all the sports bars and parties and so on and so forth, and there are 2 or 3 companies that have been tracking that, and they get the total viewership well over 150 million, which makes it the biggest TV event in history.
Was this expected because of the matchup?
Yes, I think so. I mean, with a 1-point spread by the Vegas sports books, we knew we were going to have a very tight, close, exciting game, and that's exactly what they delivered.
Porter, let's get to the commercials. 15 first-time advertisers, 16 advertisers who dropped out. Who were the winners and who were the losers?
Well, I think we've reached a tipping point here because the advertising on the Super Bowl, despite the fact that it has this huge audience, it does not deliver a return on investment. The big winners probably won't sell another can of beer. Anheuser-Busch and Coca-Cola won't sell another Coke. But they had very heartwarming, human interest commercials that were extremely well produced and then blitzed the internet. The Budweiser commercial with the lost puppy, 49 million people during the game on Facebook downloaded and looked at that Budweiser commercial. That's on top of the 150 million people who saw it on their TV screens.
Who didn't get their money's worth?
Well, there were some of the newcomers. Jublia, if I'm pronouncing it right, the toenail fungus.
Why? Did you see that? I think most people who saw that said, why?
Well, imagine you're sitting around at a Super Bowl party with your chip and dip.
Did they really pay $4.5 million for that?
They did. And, you know, what's interesting, others like Loctite, for the first time, spent $4.5 million. Nobody knows, even today, what Loctite is. So why do it? I mean, but the biggest advertiser, Mark, was NBC. Yeah. They had 15 ads. They advertised 2 or 3 months ago that the Super Bowl was sold out. They had almost $100 million worth of promotional spots for Blacklist and some of the other SNL and some of the other NBC programs. Why didn't they sell that space and make the money?
Did you have a personal favorite?
Of advertising? Yeah. I did not like any of them. My personal favorite is Newcastle Brown Ale, which threatened, they were 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. They were all over the internet, and they sublet space, product placement space on their commercial. And they sold out, and they got basically a free commercial.
Porter, I have to ask you, GoDaddy, did it redeem itself? Because they had an ad, and they said that it was promoting puppy mills.
No,
so
Danica Patrick.
They took that out.
Right. They took it out. I don't think GoDaddy, A, needed to advertise, B, nobody got it. The interesting ones, though, that were the public service ads, pro-women, anti-domestic violence, those were actually contributed by the NFL because they have a little problem there.
About $12 million worth of commercial time about domestic violence and sexual assault from the National Football League, because as you mentioned rightly so, the league's been under a microscope because of some of its players. Did the message of zero tolerance get across, or was it just more damage control for the league?
I think it was damage control. They've got to do something specific in terms of Roger Goodell has been way too silent on that subject, and he will speak out. He has to, because the players union right now is going to be pushing that along with the concussion issue.
You talked about some of the more popular ads. Which ones likely saw the best return on their investment?
Probably the movies and the video games that premiered today or this week. People can rush right out because all of a sudden they are aware of the fact that there's a new game. And with movies are one of the very few things that give you a decent ROI on this investment.
These 16 advertisers who dropped out, are we now in such a world of social media that they realize we're going to get millions of eyeballs online anyway, so why are we going to spend $4.5 million to advertise during the game?
Precise. As I said, I think that we've reached a tipping point. If you go back to the first Super Bowl 49 years ago, the commercials cost $45,000, 100 times less than the commercials that ran last night. Yeah. I think you're going to see a harder and harder time for the networks to try to sell ads on the Super Bowl. And $4.5 million is probably the highest that anybody's willing to pay.
Porter, I have to ask, why do you think the Super Bowl's become such an unofficial American holiday?
Well, it's interesting. Women make up now about 35 to 40% of the audience. It's a social event. It's a national holiday. And interestingly, despite my comments about the lack of ROI on advertising, the advertising is a big draw to most of the people.
Yeah.
You can wonder why Madison Avenue didn't give Tom Brady the most valuable player for advertisers, because he kept the game exciting, and everybody in between the commercials. And again, remember, NBC had 15 commercials. Every 4 minutes there was another NBC commercial.
No doubt.
Those commercials are very appealing to people because they play all over the internet for several weeks before the Super Bowl.
Actually, I thought the best ad was the one with the elderly folks. So after 100 years, you learn something. I thought that was
Unfortunately, Mercedes fell absolutely flat with the most expensive commercial that they played for weeks before, trying to trap you into watching. And
the tortoise in the hair.
Who knew what that commercial was all about?
Our director, Michael Vinciguerra, says he liked the Fiat commercial with the Viagra. That was, well, that's another time.